Hi, everyone. We're heading into character development. Thank goodness Sarah reminded me to say record. I was already starting. So module 6, you're emphasizing character development. And one of the things that the course designers are doing is helping you think of ways to revise the work you've done. So many of you were like 2,547 words. And I was like, ooh, you don't have a lot of room to play with. Because, I have that little cushion of 50 words because you never know, like if somebody has 3 personal names or whatever, you just don't know how long the information block is going to be. And y'all were like, here's my boundary, but also thank you so much for sticking to the boundaries. That's, I appreciate that. It's hard when somebody hands you 6,000 words and I'm like, I stopped at 2,500. Hurts my feelings and yours. So you're thinking of ways to work on this short story that you've done for me. And keep in mind for this class, this time, so the module, we turn it in module 6, or it's module 7 we turn in, yeah, milestone 3. Play as hard as you want. I know Elisa is thinking about even telling the story from somebody else's point of view. Sure, whatever it takes to really shake up your story. So, if you had a lot of work to do right on the story you have and you're trying to make it more clear, then do that kind of revising. But if your story was really close and, probably could be turned in as your final project, go crazy on it. Do something really different this time, because playing around with your writing is one of the very best ways to end up, even if you go back to the first way you wrote it, you will see it with a new perspective and you'll know better. In Elisa's case, she'll know better how Patrick's feeling. Even if she continues to write it in her, I just forgot the mother's name. What's her name? Nancy. If even if it ends up being in Nancy's point of view, Patrick will be that much richer of a character for having tried it out in his point of view. So this is your chance to really play. Don't worry about your grade if you're still doing all the things that happen. Like if you have a narrative arc, if you have a single point of view for your narrative voice, if you're using setting with description and sensory detail, if you're trying out figurative language, I missed one. Character development. And if you're developing your characters well, those are the things that you're being graded on. I don't worry about experimenting. Your grade is going to be fine. I'm going to really respect the fact that you're trying to get deeper into your story if you do that. So feel confident.
So it's not going to count as it's not going to be counted as like, oh my God, she's got a different story if I do it completely different, because it's the same plot but totally different from
right.
Instead of every Nancy said, it's going to be Patrick said.
Well, yes, but it will, if you do it right, it'll come out really different than that. But the thing to keep in mind is that when you upload in Brightspace, you have the chance to put that comment there. I don't know what it looks like, sorry, because they don't let me, like, I can do student view, but I can't upload assignments or anything. So I don't know what it looks like for you, but I know you can make comments. That's your place to talk to me. Tell me what you're doing, if you're being experimental, if you're trying out a new point of view, and reassure me that it's the same story. Then, if it seems like an utterly different story and you haven't said anything to me, then I'm going to have questions. So does that work for you all? Well,
yeah, on behalf of everybody.
All of you.
For the rest of you that are hopefully watching this video. And so the thing to keep in mind about character development as we move into it is, of course, we know the most interesting characters are not wholly good and not wholly bad. And I think Suzanne and Sarah have both heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again. And I probably said it in your feedback, Elisa, but I like to think of it as I almost hire a character to come in and do a job for me, right? In the novel I'm writing, Willow is a grieving sister who feels guilty on like 400 levels, right? About missing when her sister passed away, about the schism in her relationship with her mother, and they're not talking to each other anymore, that she's given up her professional job and decided to be a gig worker. Like all these things are weighing heavily on her. But if I want to make her complex, I've got to bring some joy into her life, right? I need to take her in a direction away from guilty. I hired her on to be this sad sack, but I need to actually let her resist being an utter sad sack. And so, I set her in this beautiful place and she rides her horse and she has these moments of pure joy that have no relationship to the just morass of depression that she's in. And that's the same thing you should be thinking about for your characters. I mean, at least it'd be really interesting if grieving Nancy every now and then, maybe when she was you know, a young mom and had all these other kids, she's like, I'm not sure how I could have done this if I'd had one more. Even though she wants that baby with all of her heart, how do you make her a little more complex about the whole thing? That's all. I mean, it doesn't make her any less of a grieving mother to have her have a moment when she's like, I don't know if I could have done it. I mean, like, my heart is so broken. My horse died about a year ago, and he was this amazing, just amazing horse, but he was probably too much horse for me. And every now and then the other side of me acknowledges, well, he also might have killed me. So, but I would still rather have him and have the opportunity to be killed by him than have him have died for we don't even know why. So, all to say, you can make your characters more complex. You're complex. Think of the ways that you are inconsistent in the way you identify as yourself and do those things for your character. Make sense?
Okay. Yep. I have one word about language. When I read it, like I'm reading this book now called The Brewers of London that happened in 1507. So of course there's all these terminologies that I'd never heard of, like a guitar at that time was called a griffin. Like there's all these other words. But someone made a comment on one of the other threads about people using big words. And there are words or terms that I think the average person should know. And then there are words like I think people are just sometimes using thesauruses to cite, or thesauri to sort of sound different, whatever. What's the take on that? Like, should I stick to small words? Should I, you know, when in my case, you know, the baby had Epstein's, which I described. It also had a spatial defect, which I very lightly described. And my youngest there's two different kinds of holes you can get in the heart. One is between the upper chambers, one is the lower. So my daughter has the other kind. So we found out when she was looking into, you know, military and stuff like that, it was a really, really cool ultrasound because we could see the blood flowing in the wrong direction. But I just wrote, you know, the living daughter had another hole that was in her heart, you know, rather than starting to get into more terminal. But I don't know where, like what the boundary should be. And I think in a novel, it's easier because if you don't pick up a word here or there, it's not so crucial, but in 2500.
It entirely depends on your audience. And so, I mean, depending on where you would be publishing the piece, depending on who you're expecting to read the piece, you know, if, I mean, I don't, two of us are of an age anyway, but I don't even know if Redbook still exists, but it used to be that there was a woman's magazine, I think it was Redbook, that published fiction. If you were publishing it in a woman's magazine, you would probably want to have simplified language because, not because women aren't smart, but because a broader audience would be reading that. If you were publishing it in the New Yorker, you would expect the people of the New Yorker to, if they don't know a word, they're going to look it up, but they'll probably know the words too. So for you, you have to think through what you want to do. I mean, our SNHU audience is pretty sophisticated. Most of these people are big readers and they're big writers. And so if they're saying I'm put off by a complex word, maybe their style of writing is different. You just have to, like, just the feedback you get too. For example, say you don't enjoy reading fantasy, but one of the people that you give feedback to has written fantasy, you know, it's just your audience. And so what I recommend first is to write for yourself. Write the kind of thing you want to read. Write the kind of thing that makes sense to you. And then if you're sending it out, you might want to just adjust a little bit or maybe not. I mean, you need to tell the story you want to tell with the words you want to use and then find the right place to put it, because it's do we do this in 5-10? Is it where you study, you're supposed to figure out, you write for yourself and then figure out what audience likes what you write. And so that's what you do. You write your very best story.
Yeah, but
this class isn't
it's
going to have all the
also
people that like.
I mean, I'm
You were talking. I think she froze. Okay, so you all heard and we understand, but we need to also start to move forward with what we're going to do today. And so with the first prompt that I have for you all today, you have, what I want to do is have you picture a character that you've been writing or a new one that you want to write. And I want you to do something with them, like make them be the opposite of what you would decide they were, or just decide what characteristics they have. So the prompt I'm working on that I'll put in the chat is your character is trying to decide what to eat on a Friday night. And you get to decide if they're alone at their place, or if what's more interesting is they're cooking for people to come. Either way. So your character, this one says alone, but I want you to be flexible. Your character is trying to decide what to eat on a Friday night alone at their place. Write a voice journal entry about their thought process, what they eat and why. And what I mean by a voice journal entry is either just write about them, or you could write about them making a journal entry while they're cooking and what they're thinking about. So either way, either just write about them cooking and what their thought process is, or actually write them talking. It's up to you. I know it's a little bit complex, and sorry, Sarah, because I know that you're, not in your clearest mental state. But most of all, just write, right? Okay, and if you see the chat come up again, it'll be because Elisa came back in and she won't see this chat, okay? All right, on your marks, get set, right.
I'm sorry, I lost.
I forgot to tell you, you had a minute left. You're pretty much out of time, so wrap up when you can. All right, I see Suzanne is back. Lisa had a shortened writing time. Here's Sarah. So I usually take notes when you guys read back to me, but I'm going to try really hard to do this just on the fly. So, who wants to read first?
I will, but it's crazy.
Oh, good. Crazy's fun. Let's go.
And I don't know if I did exactly what you're asking for, but in her best Julia Child voice, Cassie spoke shrilly to her tuxedo cat. And today we have a small appetizer of raw chicken. And as we always do in this house, we'll add just a spot of vitamins and a pinch of salt. Sammy sat there on the counter waiting eagerly for his dinner. And if you don't mind, good sir, I'm going to refill my glass of Chardonnay and grab some string cheese. Cassie stumbled a bit when she put Sammy's dish down on the floor, bumping her head on the counter as she went over. Oh, shit, scowling and losing her Julia Child impression. She stood back up and topped off her wine glass. Forgetting to grab the classy string cheese, she half walked, half stumbled over to the couch. Sir Sammy, resuming Julia's voice, it's a fine night to dine together. Why don't we add some mood music, shall we? I'm too sexy for my shirt, too sexy for my shirt. Doing the dance on the catwalk, my dance on the catwalk. This is truly a life, Cassie thought as she swirled the woody flavored wine around her mouth. Sammy jumped into her lap from out of nowhere, causing her to gasp and inhale some of the treasured gold in her mouth. Fits of coughing sent Sammy running.
What an interesting, this was Cassie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what an interesting perspective on Cassie that we've never had before in this writing, I think. I don't want to take over from other people first. Anybody have anything to?
I loved this. It was so good, especially I really like the treasured gold. I love wine, and so it's like when you accidentally spill, it's like, oh no. But no, I really like the seeing side of Cassie of like just being able to like let loose and have fun.
Thank you.
I thought it was great, especially the Julia Childs and the pinch of salt. The only thing, my husband has just been rewatching Julia Childs for the black and whites, like driving me bonkers. So all I can say is the only thing you missed is she adds butter, no matter what. It all starts off with gobs and gobs of butter. But it was fabulous. I loved your story.
Thanks.
It was such great insight to Cassie because she was having someone over for dinner and living like her richest life, and it didn't have to be people. You know, it showed how meaningful Sammy was in her life, or is in her life, or if I was using the literary present tense, I would say is. And that she's got some complicated things. Like we know she's tipsy, and we know Cassie's past, and so that's a lot for us to take in. I mean, if it's a portion of what you've been writing, what a fascinating insight to Cassie. Yeah. It fits, and it's not crazy, actually. It was really coherent. And I was amazed that you, one, said you're crazy, two, said you're souped up, and three, wrote so much. That was pretty impressive. Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I'm following in the animal theme. The end. Elisa opened the refrigerator and looked up and down, moved the ketchup over to see what was hidden behind it. First, there was the leftover soup. That's easy, she thought. 1 minute in the microwave. She poured it into a bowl, nuked it, and carried on looking. She pulled out leftover salad and thought it looked too soggy. And then she spied a kielbasa stick, grabbed it and took a bite while rummaging around. She took another. The kielbasa was pungent. She burped it back up and thought, should I take a second bite? Burping again, she threw it to the dog. She'll fart all night, but she'll return the gratitude and it will be worth it. Giving up on bothering with the fridge, Elisa turned to grab a power bar and crammed it in her mouth.
That's pretty good considering you had, I think, like 3 minutes to write. Well done.
I like that it was so detailed, like pretty detailed, like step by step, and like the thought of grabbing cold kielbasa and just biting into it kind of turns my stomach a little bit, but the fun detail and then like the whole bodily function expectation that comes with that, I thought that's cool.
Thank you.
I really liked how, because you had to write in such a short time, like how we could just like see and like be with the person that's going through the fridge, especially like we've all been there trying to figure out what to do and maybe choices that are different, but it was really good. It was really good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that you were characterizing a person who had a desire that wasn't being fulfilled. And so she opens the refrigerator for leftovers. So already she's a little dissatisfied for some reason. She moves the ketchup. And she nukes the soup, but she never eats it, which is weird. And then she takes 2 bites of the kielbasa and then decides if she's going to take a second bite. So if you were editing, you'd go back and take a look at that. But it's fascinating because my like literary spidey senses say this person wants more of something and it's probably not food. So that seems like the Friday night, addition to it, though. I mean, I've never been a go out on Friday night person, but it's an implication we can make from the read. That turned out pretty well. Oh, Suzanne, you haven't gone. Sorry.
Use some of my meds. No, I'm just kidding.
It wasn't that I didn't know how to cook. It was because I was afraid to make a meal more complex than heating a packed meal over a campfire. This kitchen is smaller than that of the castle, but larger than the 2 logs in the dugout fire pit where the fire would lick the food. I was lost. I knew what most of these instruments are, but which size do we need? Can this flat pan that's not as curved be used to fry the vegetables? Or is that for the deer? How could I be in charge of creating sustenance when I can barely sustain myself? Tears started to bubble, but there was an onion within reach. One thing at a time, one chop, and one slice.
Interesting. I missed a little bit of your words came together in the beginning. Could you read it one more time?
Yeah. It wasn't that I didn't know how to cook. It was because I was afraid to make a meal more complex than heating a packed meal over a campfire.
Next line.
Or did you want the whole thing? Okay.
I do.
This kitchen is smaller than that of the castle, but larger than the 2 logs in a dugout fire pit where the fire would lick the food.
Okay, that's far enough for me because I thought I heard castle. Does anybody want to hear the rest, or are we good now?
Okay. You said that you compared it to a campfire. Is she a bit confused? Is she at a campfire, or is it just she's the maid in the kitchen? Yeah, that was confusing for me. But also, she's in a castle as a maid or whatever. Wouldn't there be someone else cooking, just to get technicalities? But I understand
she's out of the castle. She's somewhere else.
Okay.
And then, of course, what you can't know is that Suzanne sometimes writes about a princess who's going to become a queen eventually. So what we have is somebody who doesn't know how to cook.
Gotcha. Yeah. I love the last bit when she reaches for the onion and she's like, it almost seemed like she thought that was the safest thing to do. It was like, I can manage an onion.
I think
The
they
little things.
did a fantastic job with setting establishment.
Mhm.
Like, she was in a place, and we understood that it wasn't like here right now. It was in a fantastical type setting. I also liked the introspective voice at the beginning. It set the mood. And then I also love that the fire licked the food. That's cool.
Because we would totally expect us to lick the food, which was awesome. And I think what Elisa was pointing to that I love is you're really opening up the possibilities. Because she starts with an onion, she's about to get a rude awakening. Yeah. So I think it's really great because you have this amateur cook who's probably going to fail, but also succeed a little bit. And it's, you know, a story many of us who have cooked are really familiar with, that, you know, you start poorly and usually get better.
Yeah.
But the thing that I like about this that reminds me of the character that I've known is that she's willing to dive in, get her hands dirty, be involved in something that wouldn't be expected of her. She doesn't hesitate. That's what I like about her. You know, she's not going, ooh, this isn't my job. She's just like, ooh, this is not normal for me, but I can make this work. And that's a real characterization happening. And that's what we're working on this time. So nice.
I also like the juxtaposition of her wondering if she could, was it cooking a deer? But then when she reached just for the onion, it's like the massive distance between managing an onion and a deer.
Yeah. Yeah, and like she says deer. She's not like a side of venison. She's saying deer. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like she's finding backstrap off the deer. She's, yeah.
It's not come from the supermarket butchered in a little plastic tray.
No, I think I would probably be a full-time vegetarian if I had to actually carve out my food.
So my daughter's roommate, her freshman year in college, had this really cool deer bread spread. And she's up in Pullman, and my daughter she asked her about it, and the girl said, yeah, I found the deer, I shot it, I cleaned it, I ate it, and then I made it into a bedspread. And my daughter was just like, okay then, you know, and my mommy made me a knitted blankie.
That's funny. Okay, so I was just fixing a prompt to work better. So Sarah is going to be a bit off for a while, or maybe because she's got to talk to somebody. So it's going to be the two of you probably, but I'm going to still put it in the prompt.
Is she in the hospital? I just realized the background. Like,
oh yeah, she's it's amazing that she's with us.
Amazing dedication.
Yeah, it's something to do. I mean, if you've ever been hospitalized, it's nice to do something else, to think about something else, right? Okay, so the new prompt is again with a character. Keep somebody in mind. You know, it can be yourself, it can be somebody you're writing about. But get them alone with someone who hurt their feelings. And now that person needs their help. Write a scene or dialogue or an exchange hinting at the hurt caused by the other and whether or not your character is going to help. In other words, how do they handle when somebody who has been bad to them now needs some kindness from them? Okay, good luck on your marks. Get set, right. You have about a minute left. Okay, everybody, please come back in. How did it go?
Good, you get to hear more about my extremely dysfunctional family.
Is there anybody that doesn't have a dysfunctional family?
So my husband wants me to quit the master's program and just write a modern aged married with children, because we are that level of dysfunctional. And
Well,
I've tried to explain that, first of all, I've wanted to do this for years, but that however dysfunctional we are towards each other, some of it is extremely comic, but not enough for married with children. And that insulting absolutely everybody in our family by airing our public laundry really isn't the way to go.
probably not how to lower the
no.
dysfunction.
I'm not Harry and Meghan. I'm like, I'll keep things quiet.
So am I coming through to you guys okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm like super robotic on my end.
You're robotic, but it's fine.
Okay, that's weird. I mean, I've got Starlink. It should not be happening. So let's see, Elisa, you were ahead of Suzanne last time. So Suzanne, do you want to start this time?
Okay. Kaylin looked down at the sorry excuse of an uncle. He hung from the ledge, fingers biting into the gravel, trying to claw his way back up. She hesitated. Should she end this here? Let him fall to the shore, bones breaking on the tide? Thorpe deserved this. He murdered her parents and also herself. She stepped closer, her feet inches away from his hand where she could stomp and twist and get the revenge that coated her throat. She didn't want to become a monster. She didn't want to be anything like him. She knelt down, extending her arm. Remember, I didn't gut you like the pig you are. He looked up. His fear overrode his own disgust. He reached for her hand, his magic burning her arm as she pulled him up.
Oh, when you said that she,
Sorry,
Sorry.
my watch decided that it wanted to.
we had an extra person.
Yeah.
When you said that he had murdered herself, that means like her sense of self, her identity, is that?
Yes, not meant to make it like that, but you're correct. But yeah, he almost like murdered her. I just didn't grammatically make it.
Oh, good, because I didn't think she was a ghost.
No.
Okay, good enough. Elisa, thoughts?
I loved it. I really could feel like the pause as to, whether or not she's debating whether she should rescue him. And what I liked when I'm thinking about what I wrote, which is mainly dialogue, versus what you have a lot of like the bigger picture. So you have a lot of the environment and the senses and the this and the that. Whereas I'm noticing with these 6-minute things, I go one way or the other.
Mhm.
So I've either got dialogue or scene. I can't seem to juggle both in the 6 minutes, but you did a really good job of putting both in there, whether it was thoughts to herself about whether he's a pig and she should rescue him or not. It really, I felt like a proper scene.
Yeah,
Thank you.
The one thing that I would add that I felt like I wanted, which is a lot to ask in 6 minutes, but if you were going to revise this and add it in there, when you have her not wanting to be the monster, I feel like there would have to be sort of a feeling like maybe when she pictures his broken bones, or maybe when she pictures like something about how there would be these warring emotions. And I'm not telling you what to write, I'm telling you what I'm thinking about. I somehow want her to be able to sense the monster rising in her. Like, you know, instead of just, she acknowledges he's a monster, but how she would feel about what happened to him would make her a monster or not, right? And if she can handle his mangled form when she could have helped him, then she is a monster. And so there's like, it feels like there's one more step to her recognizing that she's not that person. And also, I love that she lectures him before she helps him. That seems very appropriate. And my thought was, yep, she's got to do it. And the second she gets him on the ledge, she's in danger all over again. I mean, I feel like it's going to create another, like, you know, when you tell people, don't go down in the basement because there's an axe murderer down there. She's going in the basement. So in this case, she's helping him up and he's still going to hurt them. I can't believe I'm still robotic. I'm going to stop my video and start it again. Are you ready to read, Elisa?
Sure, if I can decipher my handwriting. I really need to learn how to write clearer when I've got my 6 minutes. Okay. Claire's phone beeped and she looked at the phone screen. Joanne? Claire hadn't heard from her sister in 6 years. She picked up the phone hesitantly. Sis? Hey, I have a favor. I'm coming to Seattle for a wedding and need somewhere to stay. Can I stay with you for the night of the 18th? Claire looked back at her phone. What? Joanne repeated her request. I'm sorry, you called me after 6 years and need a place to stay. Yes. And what makes you think that's okay to ask? You're my sister, she replied with anger. You live in Seattle, it's not a brainer, put me up. 6 years, Claire exclaimed. Yes, well, I'm going to give you a second chance, Joanne said. But you never even told me why you stopped talking to me. You know, she replied. No, I don't. Yes, you do. Okay. Look, I never knew. I did apologize 1,000 times for something that I still don't know I did. And you still ignored me for 6 years. Well, I'm done now. We can be friends. So can I stay with you? Claire looked at her phone. Stay at the Red Lion Inn and we can do lunch. We'll take it from there.
Oh, good job, Claire.
And yes, it's true. My sister didn't talk to both my brother and I for each of us for 10-year spats, telling us we knew why. And then she said that I'm one of 5 and that she found having so many siblings overwhelming. So she would just cut one of us out and then go on with the others and then switch around. So.
All right,
Yeah.
any thoughts, Suzanne, on what you heard?
I thought it was like one of those like comical like moments of like, but you know why, and everyone's like, but we don't. Please tell us. And so like it's like the digging of like, ooh, but why? Why is the true reason? But also I did like setting the boundaries and then like, no, this is it. This is it. Something that Dr. Max actually when I was like taking the class that you're in was like, hey, your dialogue tags. So like I think even like cutting a couple of them out of like the replied because it's like implied that she is replying to them. I think like if you were to go back and revise, that would be good.
Once it starts going back and forth, you can go a couple times without a tag because we'll know who is who. Because the new paragraph tells us who's speaking. So, you know, so you don't have to go, she replied, she said, she did this, she did
No,
that.
I wondered about that, but then how do you do it when you're reading? So it's one thing when you're reading,
Mhm.
right? Then you know it's the new paragraphs. But when you're reading out loud and it's the same voice, how do you always know if you
Yeah,
don't?
I mean, so when she says, I don't even know why you stopped talking to me. So I'm going to just riff it. I don't know what you wrote, but I don't know why you stopped talking to me. I think you do. no, I don't. It's quite simple and I'm ready to forgive you. And I know they're the different people because there's just a pause, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And it's fun because I feel like we're tighter in on Claire because we have a little bit of her perspective. And so we're like, this person, Joanne, is just, insane. But what would be super lovely is if you turned it on its head and actually Claire does know, but she's pretending she doesn't. I mean, one of the most fun things that I've done in my fiction is to take these real life things like what you experienced and then just make one shift that isn't true to life, but
Right.
is true to an experience, and then let it take off into the realm of fiction for you.
Okay.
Yeah, because you've got all these experiences, you might as well capitalize on them. Sarah had to go. She sent me a note on Slack, so she's not joining us or anything. So we actually had a really super short session today, but I am going to put the recording up, and when I do, I have this thing, and I think you've received it before, Suzanne, but oh dear, did I shut that? Hold on. But there's a Judy Bloom of all people masterclass on characterization that is so good, and so I will. I wonder if I can do this and copy the hike. So there you go. Can you see that, Elisa?
Yep.
Maybe click on the link before I close out so that you get a chance to go to the Judy Bloom Masterclass Writing Tips for Character Development by Judy Bloom. I said that twice. It's shockingly good. So I recommend trying out some of those writing prompts, especially if you move into Patrick's point of view, then.
Yeah. I think masterclass is that and Khan Academy are just phenomenal.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's been such a pleasure to spend Saturday morning with you. I'm going to do it again in 2 weeks, which is the 18th of March.
And I will not be there. I will be
at Wazoo.
Enjoying Wazoo. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I went there for a year before I went to the Air Force Academy.
So my daughter wants us to go to the creamery. She said there's a creamery there, and then there's a pie place in Deary, Idaho.